Welcome to week 5, I think it is. I think it's week 5. It might be week 6, but I think it's 5. And if I'm wrong, then I'll be sure to leave some sort of correction somewhere around the screen. It's been quite a productive week, actually. In addition to my normal grammar review, I have finally taken the plunge and actually started doing some of these readings that I've been finding in the various places that I alluded to in the last video. I decided to start with looking at the stories that were posted on Professor Jordan's website. I have read the story of the Lord of the Land of the Dead, which is all about Nahuatl, who is the Aztec underworld god, and I dipped into some of the other stories as well, including the one about the death of Quetzalcoatl. Fortunately, the stories are very well annotated with grammar notes. There's some nice glosses and some explanations of content and things like that, which I very much appreciate. So far, the vocabulary has actually been pretty easy to keep a handle on. I feel like I already know most of the words that are in these stories, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I've also finally actually started making my own flashcards. Yeah, I'm old school. I like physical flashcards. I know all you people these days like your online Anki decks and whatever other apps are popular these days. I like the physical ones, which means by the end of things, I end up with a big stack of them. So far, I've only really been making flashcards for the lexical items that appear in the stories themselves. So for each flashcard I can see them in context when I read the story, which helps me remember them. But I've also created cards for various, mostly verbs that appear very commonly, and ones that I get confused. There's a couple of pairs of verbs that sound really similar but mean completely different things. Like, for example, I'm probably going to get this wrong even now, but the verb... See, even now I can't really remember, but I believe it's koa means to buy and kawa means to leave, but I could have got those mixed up even just now. As I expected, so far the biggest obstacle for my comprehension of these stories is actually in the word order, because it does have a free word order, in the syntax, and also in all the little grammatical discourse particles, and I find that very often for me is a stumbling block early on, because when you first start out learning the language, there's so many tiny little word pieces that show up in virtually every sentence, and you're not really sure what they mean or how they translate in different situations, and so often it's so dependent on context. Like in Nahuatl, there's particles like you and ao, and especially in. In is so ubiquitous, it's extraordinary. In is very often described as Nahuatl's definite article, but it's so much more than that. It has so many different functions. There's actually an entire chapter about all the uses of in this book, and I have to refer back to that constantly because it's everywhere, and I still don't really know how to interpret it in all the different places I see it. It actually kind of reminds me of when I was first studying Mandarin, where there's the particle de, which at first, ostensibly it has a very simple, easy to understand meaning. They say, oh, it's just for possession. So when you say like, my dog, you would say 我的狗. That's easy enough, but then the more you read into Chinese, the more you start seeing it in weird places that you wouldn't expect to see it, like in relative clauses. It connects the head noun with the relative clause that comes before it. That's not possession. They're like, oh, it's associative. Oh, okay, kind of. But then you see it in other weird places, like in expressions like 好样的 or 亲爱的. That has nothing to do with possession. Why is there a de at the end? And it's context. So it's a lot like that. There's just this little particle that just keeps appearing, but there's really no one way to translate it, or no sort of ironclad method for discerning what it means in any given context, and I'm pretty sure the only way that I can ever properly learn it for myself is to just just being exposed to it in all of its possible different contexts, just gradually absorbing when and when not to use it by osmosis. So for the coming week, I plan to have a look through the other stories on Professor Jordan's website, and if I feel confident enough, then maybe I'll tackle some of the other texts in this book, or, as I say, go on to Nahuatl Wikipedia. The content there, as I suspected, is mostly geographical or political things to do with Mexico and Mexican culture and politics, things like that, which isn't as interesting to me as some of the other stories I found, but I've sort of got to take what I can find, so that's fine. I'll at least have a broad variety of stuff to read from all these different sources that I'm pulling things from, so it should be interesting. And I will keep you up to date with how things go in the next vlog, so I'll see you then. Thanks very much for watching, guys.